ECP is Ethical Capital Partners. It's a private equity group who has acquired Mind Geek, which owns Pornhub. It's
all the sites that you pretend not to go to are owned by Mind Geek. You have to understand, when you operate a platform like Pornhub, when you have sites that have 130 million daily active users, but bad guys are always trying to exploit the platform.
As a recovered drug addict, I constantly say we're not bad people who need to get good. We're sick people who need to get well.
Well, I'm a Canadian. That's why I'm so nice and polite. So I was going to be a rabbi. I never thought in a million years that I would have anything to do with the adult entertainment industry.
Experience wrestling strange men in hotel rooms, and some of them wanting to get dressed up in women's pantyhose. And wait, you're a federal judge. This is awkward.
Here comes the best, the most well-rounded, best-smelling, nothing off-limits podcast in the world. Welcome to Quadcast with Kortney Olson, the woman with the world's deadliest thighs. Let's get ready to mumble!
We're back with another episode. I have the Solomon. You prefer Solomon over Saul.
Whatever you call me is great. Solomon is...
Shlomo.
Shlomo, yeah, that's right.
That was your college name, right?
That was, and all growing up, I never heard Solomon. Solomon's like that weird name that's on a passport that you only find out when you start, doing something professional. You're a lawyer and you're told, well, that's your legal name. You have to do that. I'm like, I'm Shlomo, but... It's okay, many names.
Time to grow up and use the full name?
Correct.
Yes, correct. Friedman, one of the members of ECP. So I also will do my best to remember to switch back and forth between us. So this is like, ADD, someone's nightmare. When you get, entrenched in a conversation and you're like, oh, the camera's pointing at my face and I'm not the one talking. So good, we've got that part down. So tell us, I like to give this opportunity for people to brag about themselves. We want to know a bit of your background, brag about yourself. What are you most proud of?
Yeah, it's a great, it's an interesting way to start. Well, I'm a Canadian, which...
Hey, buddy.
That's why I'm so nice and polite and easygoing. I come from a big family. I've got 9 brothers and sisters.
Wild.
Raised in Ottawa, Ontario. Raised by parents who came out of the hippie generation directly into Orthodox Judaism. So it was a special kind of, hippie religious fusion in our home, but equipped all of us with a lot of independence.
Yeah, I bet.
That was a really important part of my upbringing. All my siblings are off doing very different things and living different kinds of lifestyles, and I think my parents kind of just sort of revel in that. But it definitely equipped me with this center that, what other people say is not terribly important, what, the wider world says. If you're good with yourself and the people who are around you supporting you on whatever wild adventure it happens to be, and I've had a few, that's the right direction to be living your life in. So that started young for sure.
I like that.
So I guess my earliest adventure, that big adventure, was I was going to be a rabbi. That was the plan. And you're looking at me and you're like, how the hell was that possible? Fair enough. That's a reasonable question. But I go to study in Jerusalem. I'm there for 3 years. I get ordained. And towards the end of that process, I start to realize that it's not for me.
What made you realize that it wasn't for you? I'm sure you get asked that a lot, but What was the aha moment?
I think I started to internalize something which has stood with me through my law practice and to what I do today with Ethical Capital Partners. And that's this sense that if I'm not buying what I'm selling, nobody else is going to buy it either. And as I very much enjoyed a lot of aspects of the study to be a rabbi. I enjoyed the legal analysis. I enjoyed, ministering to people and being there for people in time of need. But when it came to telling people what was religious truth, what was right and what was wrong, what was dogma, what was in and what was out, I wasn't comfortable with that, given that, I was having some doubts about what was in and out and where dogma fit in all this. And I knew the last thing I could do is stand up in front of a congregation and give them capital T truth. It's not going to be authentic, and I can't be part of that. So to find something else to do, if being a rabbi is not a career for a nice Jewish boy, I said, what do we need? We need more criminal lawyers. So
You can't knock criminal lawyers either. I've had to hire one myself, and
look, the criminal law has been my life for 15 years. I love everything about it. Particularly, I love giving a voice to people who don't have a voice, speaking for someone who's been maligned or misdescribed. Right? When you think about who our clients are, where they come from, the public usually has an opinion about them, and that opinion is based often on misinformation, on a tiny snippet of facts, or on what this person did in their worst hour of their worst day, when there's so much more than that.
That's a really good way of putting it, Saul. I look back at the time when I needed the criminal lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a time where I'm like, this is interesting with ECP, and these guys have represented, X, Y, and Z people, and I had a conversation with my dear friend who he and I had 4 felonies hanging over our head. Yeah. And as a recovered drug addict, I constantly say we're not bad people who need to get good. We're sick people who need to get well.
Of course.
And he's like, yeah, well, you've used a defense attorney when we were in that position, and I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Well said. There's a lot to be said for your profession and the amount of shit you have to deal with.
I think people have this idea, and it's largely media influenced, of who the criminal lawyer is and what their values are. I think I spent many years in various aspects of my practice being a social worker with a law degree. You walk into a criminal courtroom, in Ottawa, where I'm from, but I think the same is true around the world. And you see who's there and who is there. Poor people, mentally ill people, drug-addicted people, racialized people, the marginal and the vulnerable. That's who gets churned through our criminal law system by and large. And the defense lawyer's role is to be a voice for them, to pick up an unpopular cause and to tell people the other side of the story, which of course leads very neatly into what
Isn't
I'm
that
doing
true?
now.
I was just about to say, well, isn't that great timing?
Yeah.
So.
People ask me, and both my partner, Fadi Mansour, who's our managing partner at Ethical Capital Partners, they ask about, how do you go from criminal defense into Ethical Capital Partners? And obviously, the criminal and regulatory experience is important. That's how we know that this company is compliant. That's how we're able to evaluate that we use that that legal side of our brain. But there's the advocacy side that is still there very much. And when you learn about this story and you learn about the Mind Geek story, what they have done and the potential of what they have to do in the future, it's a very comfortable fit for someone who's used to speaking for misunderstood causes.
Right.
Because this is very much a misunderstood cause, not just on the company level, on the sex worker level, on the industry level. So it's very natural for us to be able to slip into that role of telling their story.
That makes perfect sense. So when you were first approached with this opportunity, right, because in the short period of time, that we've known each other and having a laugh about, we both don't consume porn, so to speak, and what's the other side of the story and so forth. When you were first given this opportunity, were you just like, what? So
it would be an understatement to say that I never thought in a million years that I would have anything to do with the adult entertainment industry.
Right.
But it's funny because even as I say that, I tell you, I've represented sex workers on criminal charges. I have seen the discrimination that they face at the hands of law enforcement. I've seen the discrimination they face when trying to do ordinary things like get a bank account or be on social media. So I've seen that as a defense lawyer, but I never thought that, I would have any more involvement in the industry than acting for the occasional sex worker and doing my best, to discharge my duty in a courtroom. So I never thought I would have anything to do with this. And I approached it with an enormous degree of skepticism. Lawyers in general, we're a skeptical bunch. We're a worst case scenario bunch. We get paid to give risk management advice, right? And I was very skeptical. But what I think I'm well equipped to do is to go into the review of anything with an open mind, and that's all I gave them was an open mind. Long story short, what I saw blew my mind, and it made me realize that this isn't a question of how could I do this. The real question is how could I not do this now, knowing what I know.
Wow, what did you discover?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's difficult to put into a short period of time, but...
Yeah, how long do you have?
Yeah, exactly, right? But what were some of the things that you came across or people's stories and I don't know how much of the backstory we need to put in here because some people might jump on this episode and be like, what in the actual fuck are these people talking about? So ECP is Ethical Capital Partners. It's a private equity group who has acquired Mind Geek, which owns Pornhub. And obviously you could list off all the other assets because there's
all
quite
the
a
sites
few.
that you pretend not to go to are owned by Mind Geek.
Right. Just laughing at some of, you were saying, the discrimination that sex workers face and from police and financial institutions and, thinking about my experience in doing, I don't cringe when I say sex work. Part of me is programmed to, right?
Yes,
because
it is.
I am a square and very vanilla to a certain degree, but, my experience in the muscle kink fetish world, right? And doing these, everybody that's listening will pretty much know my background, but my, experience wrestling strange men in hotel rooms and, some of them wanting to get dressed up in women's pantyhose and slapped around. I'm like, wait, you're a federal judge. This is awkward, or pediatricians, people we put up on pedestals who are at the end of the day, normal people who are exploring this other side of themselves, or especially for men wanting to be on the other side of their role out in society of being the breadwinner, the strong one, being able to be dominated and live in that fantasy, I suppose, for an hour. But seeing policemen, every occupation from podiatry to car mechanics to college students, they weren't always the lawyers like yourself or the high-powered people who, sit and yell at people all day and then need to get their ass whooped at the end of the day. But, you see people and you're like, okay, so this police officer who is,
Look, I think that tells us a lot about, because there's so much shame and stigma around sex work of all kinds, whether it's the, performing in pornography, whether it's more hands-on sex work, and the consumption of this material, there's so much stigma, but the reality is it is an enormous part of who we are as human beings. Sexual expression is a big part of that. It's a healthy part of that exploration, that shedding of roles, right? So when I look at, I get into look at Mind Geek, basically, and I'm tasked with, what's going on under the hood of this company.
Right.
And I had read the same thing that everybody else had read. I'd read the December 2020 column by Nicholas Kristof, The Children of Pornhub. I'm reading about a website and allegations of having underage content or non-consensual content. So I go in, like I said, very, very skeptical.
Right.
And what I'd say is there are three things that really shock me in a very positive way and encourage me to learn more. Okay. The first one is the people who I meet. I have these very preconceived notions about who the folks could be at Mind Geek, and also who are the folks who are sex workers and performers. We have these, I think, very, very rigid notions of those people. So on the Mind Geek side, I meet tech executives who care very much about the work they do, who put trust and safety at the forefront of what they do, who feel very much maligned and misunderstood by the public, right? Because at this point, their owners have not really spoken up for them.
Right. And how many employees are we talking about here?
So we're looking, 1,300 worldwide, offices in Montreal and Luxembourg, Cyprus, LA, and Austin, Texas.
Okay.
So a big company, but I didn't know what to expect when I walked into this office building. I won't tell you what I expected, right? It was so far from reality, and I met really wonderful people who care very much about the safety of the individuals, both posting content and consuming content on their platforms, and are really motivated by that. Their values, I was shocked to learn, align with my values. So that's first. I see people, and I meet them, and I get to know them and learn about how they approach their work. The second thing is I learn about the technologies they've created. Okay,
right.
And there's a very old story when it comes to online porn. And it basically is, and it's a true story, it's the story of how porn built the modern internet. You see, because adult is so stigmatized, it doesn't get sort of the mainstream support. You can't go to a big company and say, build me this product. So when you look at the dawn of the internet, everything we take for granted today, payment processing online, streaming video, who do you think built that?
Interesting.
Right? Long before there was Netflix, okay? Long before anyone mainstream was thinking about streaming video over the internet.
Right.
The adult industry built that. Who wanted to take credit cards over the internet before anyone else did and had to build those solutions themselves, right? So all, similar, with in terms of online security initiatives, porn built what we take for granted on the internet. And I started to realize that the tools that they've created to keep their sites safe, to ensure that only verified uploaders can post and all the content is appropriate and screened using machine learning tools and others, I quickly arrived at the realization that this cannot stay in the adult industry. This technology has such wider applications.
Right.
It's a travesty to keep it only in the adult industry. If we're serious about building an internet that keeps kids safe, that protects people's intimate images, this technology needs to be shared broadly. And that's I never expected to find that going in.
That speaks a lot of your character.
Well, I mean, it's important that the work that I do aligns with my values. And one of the wonderful things about Ethical Capital Partners is the people who I'm surrounded with. It's not just me, very far from it. My partners, our advisors, like you, are all people who share these values. So, for example, the protection of children comes first.
Right.
So let's talk about that for a moment.
Okay.
When you hear false allegations about how easy it is to post on Pornhub, these have no basis in reality. And I encourage anyone listening to this, go make a verified uploader account. See how long it takes. You'll see that you'll be required to give a full face moving video scan as well as a scan of government issued ID. And if those two things don't match up, you don't even get in the door.
That's interesting. Being on OnlyFans, and they've recently changed some rules. Like you have to tag if somebody's in a video with you, because previously you could submit a waiver, a liability form, I guess you call it, along with their ID, and then they changed it to where they need to hold the ID and hold the form at the same time. And now, from what I understand, is they have to actually have a verified account. So, it was a bit of a process, but never anything along the lines of needing to record a video of yourself and using... So it's using facial identification?
It uses what's called, both facial recognition and a liveness check, right? Because you have to understand, when you operate a platform like Pornhub, when you have sites that have 130 million daily active users.
That's insane,
right?
dog. Hold on. We got to bookmark that, and let's come back to that as well.
But bad guys are always trying to exploit the platform, right? Just like bad guys are trying to rob banks and they're trying to, hack popular sites, bad guys are always trying to exploit you, okay? So we need to create a platform that continuously adapts to those threats. So let's talk. So first you have the verified uploader. Now, if you pass that machine check, and there are a number of checks in there because the ID needs to match the information that you put in, the ID and your face need to match. Your face needs to be verified as a live face. And I've tried this out in various permutations. I've tried to hold up a photo of someone. We found a passport of some celebrity. It's not real, it's from a movie, but there's a screen capture. I'm like, let's try this, right? Boom, red X, red X, red X. It doesn't let it go through. So you need to pass the machine liveness check. You haven't even created an account yet, Kortney, okay? We're not even there.
Right.
Then a real person, a moderator, has to review those results, and they themselves look into the information you provide. They're looking for any discrepancies, even though you've passed our third-party provider liveness and ID verification.
Right, because YouTube and Meta, as far as their team, at least I think with YouTube, don't they outsource the moderation aspect as well?
Not only do they outsource moderation, but we're not even at moderation yet. You haven't tried to post a piece of content. All you try to do is make an account. Now, if you had these rules on Facebook or Twitter or Reddit to make an account, nobody would make an account.
Right.
Okay? Now, I will also acknowledge that these do impose, difficulties on our content creators. There's no question they do. And what we try to do every day is balance the need to keep the platform secure, but also only collect the minimal personal information required. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, these are steps we need to take, and they are not negotiable.
Right.
So if you fail one of these steps, that's the end of it for you, right? Unless you can get us now, try an ID, a better scan of your ID, a better scan of your face. But if you don't go past the verified uploader stage and pass all of the internal tests, you don't even have an account.
Right.
Okay. So now you have an account, all right? Maybe something was odd about the ID. We verified it. We looked at it, but it has to pass fully the computer checks and the human checks. Now let's talk about content for a moment, okay? You want to upload content. So a person has a video of themselves. They want to upload it. It doesn't just go live on the site, right? Unlike Facebook, where you post a picture from your aunt's barbecue, they go up in 2 seconds.
Right.
There is a significant machine learning process as well as human process. So you try to upload content. First thing that happens is it gets scanned through no less than 6 databases. looking for matches to either known underage content or known intimate image content or otherwise content that's been removed from our platform or many of our partners. So we partner up with YouTube, CSAI Match, with Thorn, that's Ashton Kutcher's sponsored company, that basically looks for the identifying characteristics of previously flagged content and matches it to what's being uploaded. So you don't even know this, but your video is basically being cross-referenced to millions of other images and videos.
Oh, that hurts my head in terms of the technology.
Exactly.
I can't even wrap my head around it. And what about missing children? Is there a partnership with, what's the agency?
So NECMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we have access to their database of, and these digital fingerprints are called hashes, that's the mathematical term for them, that basically reduces a piece of content to a line of computer code. Ugh. Just like our fingerprints are unique, the fingerprints of digital files are unique. Okay. Now, you've gone through these 5 or 6 databases, and then you get to our tool. And this is one of the tools I'm most excited about. It's called Safeguard. And what Safeguard can do is it can match it to previously flagged content, even if the person has amended or edited the image or video, right? So we then scan the databases again using our proprietary tool. So this notion that, you know, and just to be clear, a human hasn't seen it yet. Right? These are all machine tools happening in the background. If you pass every single one of those, you need green check marks all the way down. If you get one red X, we're back to the beginning. That content is not going up on the platform.
Right.
Now we go to human moderation. So every piece of content is reviewed by a human moderator, even, and this is important, Kortney, even if you've had an account for 5 years and you've been posting content and you're the most trusted person and all your content is excellent, you get the same scrutiny. A human still needs to review it. There is no shortcut to that. In fact, I've been to Cyprus. I've seen our moderators at work. They're aided by computer tools and AI tools, but they are eyes on that video. In fact, one of the things we also do is we live transcribe the audio, because the video might be good, but what if they're saying things that are illegal? Okay? In other words, acting out scenarios that either it's illegal to do that or it violates our terms of service.
So in terms of like rape fantasies?
Not acceptable.
Really?
Right? Absolutely. So you cannot have the simulation of non-consensual conduct on our site. It is against our terms of service. Now, once again, be very clear. So that is off limits. You can't have something that even simulates, let's say, you know, a hidden recording. It doesn't matter if it's really consensual. If it simulates that, we say that is not okay. We will not promote that content. Or, for example, you have content that has hate speech in it, right? The use of racial epithets, the use of extremist language, the use of incitement to violence.
So when you see, mentioning the racial aspect, when you see Asian MILF gets blah, blah, blah.
Great question.
Yeah.
So let me address that. So what we do is we differentiate between degradation of somebody, right, in terms of the use of a racial epithet against them. So let's say there was a comment that described someone with a racial epithet, that would get banned, that comment. But if an individual themselves wants to promote their racial identity and use certain terms to describe themselves, obviously within our terms of service, that we have no issue with. So we see it very different as a person owning their own identity. Remember,
interesting, because other people are going to stand back from afar and say, oh, Pornhub allows this type of behavior, when in actuality it's the person posting the content. Yeah,
in fact, one of the things that people don't realize, and I'm happy to educate them about, is that the titles are chosen by the uploaders.
Right.
The titles and the tags are chosen. Now, you should know, our content moderation also reviews the titles, the tags, and any metadata. We have, I think we're up to about 15,000 banned words and terms. We update it every day with intelligence from law enforcement and various advocacy organizations, because these criminals keep changing language, they keep using coded words, and we're continuously learning to ensure that our platform stays free of that type of, we're talking about text language here, okay? It's a constant challenge, but it's one that our people and our technology are up to. So now, this long process that we've described here, if you hold that in one hand, and I have reviewed and I've seen it in detail, and I love walking people through it, and you listen to the misinformation that's being foisted by, you know, groups like Exodus Cry or Nicosi, which is really morality and media, that organization, they're night and day. They have nothing to do with one another. So I know that, you know, when we looked at these processes, we were beyond impressed. by what they have put into place. And we want to share that approach with the rest of the adult industry and with the broader internet.
So 2 questions for you. 1, where do you see this technology being employed in other places? And 2, why do you think the former owners, and let's be clear, they're no longer a part of the current landscape.
They have no executive role. They hadn't had for almost a year, but we bought 100% of the shares. They have no involvement, no interest whatsoever in the business.
Nice. And why do you suppose they just shit the bed and went silent? Like, who thought that was a good idea? Do you have any insight on that?
Look, I as opposed to sort of looking at what skills did past owners not have, I know what skills we have, right? And
fair play.
I think part of it is, if you're proud of what you're doing, okay, then you are willing to be upfront and out front in terms of defending it. And this is a company that is doing, great work, and not just is doing great work, but has a potential to do even greater work. And you ask about where this technology can be applied broader, in a broader sense. We want to harness the technology that we've created to screen content and give it to law enforcement so they can use those same tools to detect illegal content. But also to the broader internet, the sort of mainstream social media platforms. When you think about the issues that are facing young people in particular on the internet right now, a huge challenge is non-consensual images. All right, that is an individual who may have consensually created an image, but then shared it with someone who turns out to be, a real jerk. Okay,
right. We're talking about revenge porn.
Revenge porn, and I don't like to use the word revenge porn because to me, porn isn't non-consensual. Porn is consensual. Porn is sexual expression. That's why when it comes to underage material, the universally accepted term is child sex abuse material. You can't have child porn. Those 2 things cannot live side by side. If it has a young person, it's not pornography. Okay, it's child sex abuse material.
Super important to make that distinction.
Yeah, and the same is true when it comes to non-consensual intimate images. All right, but somebody loses control of it. The internet needs technology that can detect these images before they're transmitted. So imagine what we use, the safeguard technology, for example, being used on Facebook. That is, every image that gets uploaded has to be cross-referenced against a hash. Okay, a hash database, that's those digital fingerprints. Or on WhatsApp when you text it to someone. And if it matches, it just can't go through. Like, I want to live on an internet where a young woman who's lost control of an image, all they do is they create a hash, that's a line or 2 of code with a free program, and some NGO or advocacy organization can have this technology. It's not going to be ours, we'll give it away. But every image is then scanned against it, meaning your image can't even be texted to somebody without your consent.
So that's important to point out as well. I mean, you guys are ethical capital partners. Like, obviously there's a capital aspect of it, and you're talking about giving technology away.
Look, I'm a believer that you can do well by doing good.
Right.
All right. The adult business is the core business of Mind Geek. They do it very well. They do it better than anyone else, in my opinion. They have a platform that provides for a place where people can legally and responsibly share content. Beyond that, when it comes to the application of this software, I want it as broadly adopted and in as many hands as possible.
That's great.
Okay, that's the core focus.